Hi, I'm Joe, and this is the Decahedron RPG Podcast.
Hey everyone, this is Joe. This is episode number 101 of the Decahedron RPG Podcast. This episode is going to be just a little catch up where I am with my life, and then a catch up with some feedback. I have like 13 voicemails and like another 3 emails or so, give or take one. I'm actually predicting that this episode and next episode will be getting caught up with the feedback. Then episode number 103 will be a review of the Tunnel Quest RPG. I'm going to be joined by Jason for that, but we will talk about that when we talk about that. So why am I so backed up with feedback? For much of October, I was not home. All the OSR October episodes, well, not all of them, but more than half of them were pre-recorded and scheduled to go out on the weekly Wednesday schedule because my wife and I were vacationing in Florida. We did the typical Florida things, right? We went to Disney World. We went to Universal Studios. Yeah, got to see a lot of the neat Star Wars rides and like the whole area they have set up for it. It's very cool. The Harry Potter area in Universal, very cool. The Islands of Adventure part of Universal, also cool, like Jurassic Park / Jurassic World and King Kong Skull Island type thing. Just the sets, the layouts they do for the area to put you in the mood for the rides. Very cool. Also, while we were there, we went to a place called Discovery Cove, got to like swim with dolphin and like manta rays and stuff. That was very, very cool. That was probably my favorite part of the trip. Went to Medieval Times because in addition to Valerie and I, we brought Lauren, Valerie's daughter, and her friend, and they had never been to Medieval Times before. So it's always cool to bring in the newbies. I don't know if you've ever been to Medieval Times. If you haven't, you should go. It is a pretty cool little experience. And it's all very fake. But all the areas are named for places in Spain. So one of the cool things is that right exactly across from where we were sitting was the region, area of seats for Santiago de Compostela, which, as I've talked about before, the 3 of us, Valerie, myself, and Lauren, had done the Camino de Santiago 500 hike, starting in France, across the north of Spain to Santiago de Compostela. So that was kind of cool just seeing that and actually looking around at the other counties there. It's like, oh yeah, we walked through that one. No, not that one. Yeah, Navarra. Yeah, we were there, and stuff like that. So that was cool. Yeah, if you've never been, check it out. It's cool. It's fun. It's hokey. It's very Americanized, very fake medieval history. If you ever want a more realistic medieval castle banquet feel, though, and you happen to find yourself in Ireland, go to this place called Bunratty Castle. It is in Limerick, or just outside of Limerick. A very different vibe, much more authentic. A very, very, very cool experience. So again, if you find yourself in Ireland, go to Bunratty Castle. It was great and awesome. That was a few years ago. Anyway, what else did we do there? Oh, I'm kind of a space geek. I've talked about before how one of my favorite games on the computer is Kerbal Space Program, which is kind of like the Microsoft Flight Simulator of spacecraft, if you will. Yeah, close enough. So I was like, oh, SpaceX is having a launch. Wouldn't it be cool if we could go out and see, how far away is the Cape from where we are? And while I was looking that up on the map, I saw that there was a Wizard of Oz museum. And as we've talked about before on the show, The Wizard of Oz is Valerie's very favorite movie of all time. Second place would be The Fifth Element, and then somewhere behind that is Nightmare Before Christmas, and then everything else rolls in. But no questions, Wizard of Oz is the favorite. So we went to the museum. It's much more literary based, based on the books, and even then, it's really a collection of, dare I say, junk. Yeah, just a bunch of merch throughout the last 100 years or whatever it's been since. Actually, I guess it's been more like 150 years now. 150 years since the Oz books have started being published. So there's like dolls, and there's like board games, and thimbles, stuff like that. For me, it wasn't a very great thing, but like I said, it's Valerie's favorite movie of all time. So it was great to be able to take her there and let her see that there's nothing better in life than making your loved one happy. Anyway, so we were gone. We don't like to pre-forecast when we're not going to be home, right? So that's why I wasn't ahead of time saying, yeah, my house is going to be empty for 2 weeks in the middle of October. So that's why I never mentioned it beforehand, but that's why we weren't doing any feedback during that time. And that's kind of why I'm behind schedule. Oh, and then when I got back, I landed on Sunday and I came back sick. Same thing happened last year when I went to Hawaii. I came back sick. I think it's just being around all those people, in the touristy spots, throngs and throngs of people. So probably just picked up whatever bug is going around this year. But the very next Saturday, had to get on the mics with James and Chicago Wiz to record episode 100, which was very cool. But, had to record that, had to turn that around right away, do the edit to get that out in time for Wednesday, and then getting caught up with both my main job and my part-time job. In fact, because I was away for so long, my part-time job actually needed me to come in a couple days last week during the week. And then, we didn't do any movies while we were away. So as soon as we came back, we went to see Five Nights at Freddy's, which was pretty cool. And then just last night, we went to see Nightmare Before Christmas, which is having a special 30 year anniversary. Really? That was 30 years ago? Wow. Anyway, it has a special 30th anniversary release. And so we went to see that last night because, like I said, that is one of Valerie's top 5 movies of all time. And again, making the person you love happy, nothing better in life than that. So we went to do that. And now I'm just sitting down to catch up on this feedback. And at the same time, I've been rereading Tunnel Quest for the recording that Jason and I are actually going to do tomorrow. But like I said, it will be a couple weeks before that gets out. So that's a lot of talking. That's what's been happening in my life. I don't know if you care. I do. I like when I listen to a podcast and the host lets me in on their life. I feel I get to know them a little better, and they become more than just this voice talking about gaming or whatever the episode of the podcast is, and they become more of a kind of a friend. If it's weird, a friend that you've never met or really conversed to, but yeah, I don't know. So I like it, so I do it. That's enough of me. Let's get started with this backlog of feedback.
Mailcall from the United States of America.
And the first one we have is from Jason, I think. Let's play it.
Hey, Joe. Øystein here. Really enjoyed hearing you and James talk about OD&D character creation with the Traveler Spin on your OSR October episode. Although I have to admit that I've paused just a few minutes in the episode because if we're going to do it based on OD&D or even basic, and we're going to roll in order, then the order of the attributes matter. And the order that you're using is not the order from either OD&D or basic. So explain yourself, sir.
Thanks for that, Jason. I wish I could even remember what order I did. My guess is, like I said, I was recording all these back to back, and just the week before, as you listened to it, like earlier that day, James and I had recorded the episode doing the alternate stat generation, doing it in age groups. One die for the birth phase that you have to do in order. The second one being you get to lay them down as you roll them, assign them. And the third one, you roll them all and then assign them whenever. So I'm almost guessing that I did it maybe in Tunnels and Trolls order, although I don't know. If you start with strength and you end with charisma, it probably matches some version somewhere. And as for it mattering, unless you have some sort of, I don't know the word I'm looking for, fate outlook on life, it doesn't really matter. As long as you pick an order in advance and stick to that order, it doesn't really make a difference, right? Because the dice don't know which stat you're rolling for. It's just the number that comes up. But I suspect you were being tongue-in-cheek. I think I heard some tongue-in-cheek there. So thanks for that call. And let's go on to the next one, which I believe is still you.
So, the idea of rolling to enter a career or enter a class in your OD&D. I do hope you publish these on the blog, by the way. So far, they're really interesting. I like the idea of rolling to enter, and I'll tell you why. Because in OD&D, and I know you are vacillating between OD&D and BX, but I'm going to stick with OD&D for my imaginations here. In OD&D, if you have a 16 or higher in the prime attribute of a class you're reclassing in, you can reclass. Wow, I said that confusingly. So you can change classes in OD&D, but you have to have a 16 or higher in the prime attribute of the new class. So this being not necessarily being able to going randomly to enter the class initially, maybe you always want to be a wizard, you have like a 17 intelligence, but you failed the initial roll and you had to go be a fighter for a while. But then after a while, when you're ready, you can reclass over to be a magic user. So I really like that. And yeah, I could see incorporating that. I think that makes the game kind of interesting. So I'm all for that. As far as rolling randomly for the starting level, I got no problem with that. You're totally right about the experience point tables and how by the time the higher level levels up, the lower levels will almost caught up to them. I do wonder, though, and of course I paused, any kind of boon or bonus first level as opposed to fourth level. But I will find that out as I continue to listen.
Hey, Jason, thanks for that. Oh, by the way, everyone, Jason is from the Nerds RPG Variety Cast. Awesome podcast. Definitely give it a listen. There are links in the show notes. Hey, I'm glad that you're digging on the Traveler style OD&D /BX/BECME/ whatever character creation method. Thanks for that. As for rolling to enter. All right. Yeah, no, thanks for that feedback. I think it's worth adding in there because it's easier to ignore it than to make it up if it's not there. So yeah, I will definitely go ahead and add that. So my question then to you, a counter question, is how would they be stacked? Would you give them all the same probability? You have like a 50-50 shot and you get like a +2 if you have a suitable prime rec? Or would you say like wizard is the hardest to enter? That makes sense. It's a lot of training, right? The whole sorcerer's apprentice thing. Then maybe followed by cleric, and then fighter is the easiest. And if you're going to add thief, maybe that would be even easier because, that's your ne'er-do-wells. That's the guy who's going to fit in anywhere else. And that's where he ends up, is like living on the street. And that's the order I would tend to put them in. What do you think, sir? What's your opinion? Let's listen to your next voicemail.
Okay, so, man, I need to go back and re-listen. I don't remember if you rolled for a boon and a bane at first level or not. I think if you don't roll for a bane at first level, then maybe it works out. Whether you give something because you're starting at first level instead of a higher level. Danger of rolling on that bane table. But I still wonder if you don't shouldn't throw some kind of boon to the people starting at first level compared to those starting at higher levels. I don't know. I mean, that might be a Munchkin thought too. So maybe you should ask James about that. As far as region-free DVD players, yeah, I have DVDs and VCDs from all over the world, including the Far East, and most of them will have English subtitles, so typically I'll have to watch them with English subtitles. And tarot. Yes, you're right. I didn't mean doubles when I talked about Tunnels and Trolls character creation. I meant triples, the tarot rule. And wow, that is really neat. I do like that idea. I like that risk of, am I going to get that third one or that third, whatever the number is? Very interesting. I'm definitely looking forward to that game. And again, I do hope you publish both the TNT character creation modification and the D&D character modification. So I like both those methods. So talk
Hey, again, thank you, Jason. So, random things that come to mind. So, yeah, that thing, rolling those the attributes in age groups, that was actually intended for D&D. It's just we happen to be generating a T&T character at the time. So there you go. Bob's your uncle. And I did talk to James, and he has no problem at all with us using that for you and Daniel when you make your characters. I'm going to be sending you an email about that. The other thing, about rolling for a boon and being at first level. So I'm going to replace the word level with term, because I think if you go to a second term, even if you never leveled up the first time, I still think you should be totally susceptible to having a bane. But for first term, skipping that bane, I think there's a strong argument to that. So the bane roll replaces the survival roll. I don't do a survival roll for the first term in Traveler. I talked about that before my Traveler House Rules episode. So as a house rule, I wouldn't do that for this either. Probably when I write up for the blog or whatever, I'll put that in as a suggestion. But the other thing is, given what most of the banes are, you lose all your stuff. So in that first term, you probably don't have stuff anyway. So, no biggie, you lose a point from a stat. Now that won't hurt. You lose all your experience. No biggie. You don't have any, right? So stuff like that. You lose all your money. No biggie. So I don't really think most of them would hurt a beginning character. The point of the roll is to prevent that greed from saying, yes, let me do another term, because there's nothing bad will happen to me. So let me just keep doing term after term after term. Well, other than getting older. And during the first term, you really don't have that much of a choice. So yeah, I agree with you. I think I would also skip that at first level. I mean, not first seed. Now you have me doing that for the first term. Yeah. Thanks for that, Jason. What you said something else, something about region-free DVD players. But I think we talked about all that. I think we're in agreement. We're on the same page for that. All right, let's listen to the next voicemail. I think it's from Evil Jeff.
Hey Joe, Evil Jeff. Had to stop and call you as I was driving home. Got through your latest podcast with the character creation. It was great, but I wanted to address your little mail call right afterwards. DVD regions and so forth. It's up to 6 times you can change the DVD player before it's locked, just so you know that. I also had a friend that was big into DVDs, and he actually built a desktop with 3 DVD players in it, to which he made, one region 0, region 1, one region 2, one region 6, I believe, or 5, whichever one is Japan. So yeah, he did that. So I mean, it's nice when you can have that on and eventually I think he did it to a server that he was then streaming all of his movies from. So there's a use for a desktop off to one side, as a media server, so you can watch things like that. So you didn't have to rip them all the time. And I forgot what the other thing was. Oh, well. But, yeah, great show there. Love the feedback and the mail call. I'm going to have to listen to the rest of it.
Hey, Evil Jeff. By the way, everyone, Evil Jeff is the host of the Minions and Musings podcast, another excellent podcast. All by all means, give it a listen. Links, of course, are in the show notes. Hey, Evil Jeff, about region-free and multi-region DVD. So thanks for letting me know that it's 6 times. Yeah, his idea sounds a lot like what I was saying, only mine would be external DVDs, mainly because my case does not have that many 5 1/4 inch external bays. This is the first computer I've ever actually bought that well, other than laptops. But, up until this point, I'd already put mine together, buy a case, buy a power supply, buy a motherboard, RAM, CPU, whatever drives, just throw it all together. So this is the first one I've ever bought that was pre-assembled, and it just doesn't have that many external bays. I don't think it has any 5 1/4 external bays the more I think about this. So yeah, I couldn't do that. Although I suppose I could buy a multi-bag enclosure and hook that up. And as for ripping them, I like ripping them. Right? You just put it in there, you do something else for a while, you come back, it's done. The software I use is called Emby, E-M-B-Y, and there's an app for it on the Roku, and the server runs on my computer. And so then from any of the Rokus in my house, I can just bring up any show or movie that's on my computer. Yeah, so that's what I do. Kind of off topic, but hey, I like talking about it. Thanks for that call, Evil Jeff. Rather than jump into another voicemail, I am going to do a email. And this one is from JoCool. I talked about JoCool in episode 100 because they sent a entry for the Is James a Munchkin contest. In fact, JoCool sent the only entry that said, yes, James is a Munchkin. So thanks for that, JoCool, in addition to having an awesome name. JoCool says, I am enjoying the podcast. In the recent episode, Paladins and Rangers in OD&D was very interesting. I like the idea of them being set up like a elf fighter magic user. That sounds like it could work very well. I also enjoy the group discussions on sandboxes. I want to be the kind of game master that can bring a simple map to the table and let the players go wherever they want, so sandboxes really interest me. Cheers, JoCool. So the fact that JoCool ends with a cheers makes me think that JoCool is somewhere in the British Isles, but I don't know. But anyway, JoCool, yeah, thanks for that. Like I said before, that is my favorite type of campaign. I like to do it in space. I like to do it in fantasy. It would work pretty well in the Wild West as long as you can come up with an excuse of how they got there. Although space and Wild West brings up challenges because, again, you always run into I go into this town and I ask them for a train schedule. I see everywhere the train is going. I go and I buy a map. Whereas I like the players to go out and have to discover that on their own. It's even a challenge in fantasy too, right? Because you go to the village and you should assume that each village knows where the next village is. And our whole thing about 5-mile hexes, and this hex might contain a village. And that's just wildly inaccurate, right? I mean, when you look at where I lived in England, I lived kind of in the middle of nowhere. Well, I was in the middle of nowhere as you can be in Northamptonshire. But, I was on the grounds of a castle. So the nearest village was called Helmden. There was another one called Radstone and Sulgrave Manor. Well, Sulgrave. But Sulgrave Manor I mentioned because being American, that's where George Washington's ancestral home was. All these places are within 5 miles easy. In fact, as an experiment, I drew a 5-mile hex around it on an Ordnance Survey map once. Ordnance Survey, by the way, everyone, is kind of the Rand McNally of the United Kingdom. Only it was actually a government, just like it says, Ordnance Survey. It was started by the army to know how to shoot things. But they were the absolute best maps when I lived there. Anyway, I drew a 5-mile hex around, my little house where I lived, and there were dozens of villages within that 5-mile hex. And I did the same thing for where I grew up in Rhode Island. And I mean, it covers half the state. Of course, it's a small state, but still. So 5 miles is a 5-mile hex is pretty huge. To say there's only one village there, but it's very playable. So, I've said it a lot on this podcast. Whenever reality and fun come into conflict, toss the reality and just go with the fun. Anyway, I'm getting off on a soapbox about sandboxes. Thanks very much for that feedback, JoCool. I hope you're still listening. Hope to hear from you again. And it was great hearing from you. My next email is from, I'm going to apologize for this pronunciation. I asked Google how to pronounce this name, and then I asked Google for an IPA pronunciation, and the two answers were very different. So I'm going to say that it's Øystein, that it's Øystein. Anyway, I apologize for killing the pronunciation of your name. I really do. But yeah, I'm trying not to say the name again. Anyway, you said, hi, I just discovered your podcast last week. By the way, you sent this about 2 weeks ago. But anyway, and said you're just about caught up. Wow, that's a lot. That's 100 episodes of listening to me. That would drive me batty. I appreciate that. Anyway, you continue to say, I'm really enjoying it, so please keep it up. Yes, sir, I will. That is my intent. You say that your interests are BX, OD&D, AD&D, and their clones. I will agree with you on OD&D. I will allow BX. AD&D, not my kind of game. Yeah, by the time we get to AD&D, just so much detail, so much minutia. That's just not my gig, not my thing. But, a lot of people like it. I'm not knocking you for it. I think James is a big AD&D fan, so fear not. And I know that Jason is. I am curious, though, when you say AD&D, do you mean 1E or 2E? Interesting. I've never played 2E. Anyway, you just say kind regards, and you say that you are a Norwegian living in Northern Ireland. So, Norway. I have never been to Norway. I want to go to Norway. Actually, I want to go to a lot of the Nordic countries, where our Viking lineage comes from. I think that would be really neat. And of course, Northern Ireland, speaking of Vikings, I have been to Ireland, as you heard earlier in this episode. I was only briefly in Northern Ireland, saw the Giant's Causeway, very cool. I love going to places like that because they fill my mind with like gaming ideas, right? And there was a big rope bridge that we were able to take somewhere, but it was right while we were there at the causeway. So yeah, filled my mind with ideas about giants and like the stones at the Giant Causeway are naturally hexes, right? And hex maps, cool idea, right? What if the hexes were actually geological and they were real? They weren't just lines on a map. Anyway, so I wish I had more time to see the north of Ireland. That was on that Ireland trip. But when we were in the Republic, we stayed in Limerick and we had a rental car and we would only take day trips out everywhere. Ireland's small enough that you can do that. We drive from Limerick to here or there, everywhere to see things. And then we took a cruise out of Dublin that went to the north of Ireland. It went to the Isle of Man, the Isle of Skye, went across the northern tip of Scotland. That was our trip to Scotland, where we did not tell any of Valerie's family that we were there, because every time that she's always gone to Scotland, she's never been able to see the touristy stuff because she's always bogged down with family stuff. Because, as I mentioned before, many times, that's where she was born, and that's where all her family still lives and everything. Yeah, the cruise went all around the northern tip, and it was very cool. We ended up in Edinburgh, and that's where we flew home from. But yeah, so I would love to see more of the North someday. I'm getting off topic. Thank you very much for your email, and I hope to hear more from you in the future. And I like that you like the OSR games. And lastly, we had feedback for episode 99 on the Magical Thief. And this one's from Jose Perez. Again, you are a new feedbacker. I'm always afraid that these people are going to be fellow podcasters and I just don't know their podcast. But I have full faith that if they are, Jason will send me feedback and say, hey, Jose or Øystein or JoCool has this great podcast and you should give it a listen. And that's how I found Daniel and Chicago Wiz and all that fun stuff. Anyway, Jose says, great episode on the thief idea as a magic user subclass. As you were listing spells, I think Spider Climb would be useful. I've had my wizard many times use invisibility and Spider Climb to climb and stay out of reach from attacks, but area effects spells can still get you. And then he links to an article on Dyson Logos for inspiration, and I will put that link into the show notes. Jose, thank you for that. The only thing that makes me say maybe not is I think, if memory serves me right, I'm not looking this up, that Spider Climb is a 1E AD&D spell. And I was keeping the spells to the White Box and maybe Greyhawk. And I don't think Spider Climb shows up in either of those. I'm sure, I am absolutely positive, without a shadow of a doubt, that someone will call in and let me know if I am wrong. But yeah, thank you very, very much for that email, and thank you for that suggestion. And if I am wrong that that spell is not from AD&D, I would definitely, I will absolutely add that to the list for the Magical Thief. So thank you for that suggestion. You rock. And again, thanks for the feedback. We're at 35 minutes. I'm going to do one more voicemail from Daniel. Daniel, of course, is the host of the Bandits Keep podcast, another great podcast. Again, links in the show notes. Hey, Daniel, what do you have to say?
Hey, Joe. Daniel from Bandits Keep calling in. I guess since Jason didn't get the cat out of the bag, that we were actually off gallivanting. No, I'm kidding. That's so funny, like in an odd way, that we were both sick at the same time. Oh, man. Sorry about that. But I'm catching up on shows, and number one, Tunnels and Trolls. That was very cool. I like this, the way that you did the dice assigning, you know, the first one you're stuck with, and the second one you can kind of build as you go. The third one you put them wherever you want. I thought that was a pretty fun way to do it, and I could totally see using that system. So very cool. Thanks for sharing that. And the Dungeons and Dragons one that's kind of like Traveler, where you can start on different levels. Well, not that you start on different levels in Traveler, but you know what I'm saying, where it's like a life path. That was also very cool. I could totally see combining both of those. I mean, why not? And creating a little bit more of a mini game in creating your character. So yeah, I think both those are very, very cool. The hit point thing you mentioned about David Arneson, that's super interesting. Maybe you could talk a little bit more about where you got that from, or maybe there's a simple answer. I'm curious because in Adventures in Fantasy, which is Arneson's game, right? It's not that way. It's some convoluted, like, 3 stats together. One of them is divided by 2, the other one's divided by 4. Then you do the algorithm, you know, you do the hokey. But I'm pretty sure that once you do that, they're locked in, unless your stats change. I don't really know. But basically, he does do I think your hit points stay the same. So that seems pretty consistent through maybe his concepts. So then maybe that's from the original Blackmore. I would love to know more about that. So if you can point me in the right direction, yeah, that hit point system sounds kind of interesting. Anyways, keep up the good work. Awesome stuff for OSR October, and I look forward to seeing some more.
Hey, Daniel. Thanks for that feedback. Okay, so the dice assignments, yeah, I'm glad that you like that. I call that age-based stat generation or something like that. Yeah, I like it too. That's why I came up with it. And really what it is I've heard all of these methods mentioned before, you know, and I just combined the 3 methods. And I just did it, you know, do one a die at a time. That was my addition to it. Combining it with the Traveler method, that's always been my idea, but they seem different enough that they deserve their own episodes, because I could see you going with one versus the other, or combining them. Yeah. As for the Tunnels and Trolls game, yeah, I'm looking forward to it too. You heard Jason say that he's looking forward to it too. I need to send out that email to both of you so you can build your characters. I'm really sad that we didn't get to do it all together on the episode. I thought it would have been amazing with the 3 of you making the characters. Thank you for coming clean, because Jason still will not admit that you two were out gallivanting, and he's going with this, yeah, I was sick thing, where, yeah, at least one of us has integrity. Thank you, sir. That's funny. Okay, as for Arneson's hit points, where did I find that? It came from one of 2 places. It either was in First Fantasy Campaign, which is a book that I like. I'm a big Arneson fan, so yeah, I like going through that book for nuggets. Or it came from a John Peterson blog. So I am going to pause for a second, and I'm going to look to see where I found it. I'm back. So yeah, no, it was in a John Peterson blog post, and funny enough, that blog post also mentions the Adventures in Fantasy method. But yeah, so and John Peterson says that he got it from the Great Plains Game Players newsletter, where Arneson asked someone he corresponded with to share a letter with the newsletter, because yeah, so that was one of the things about Arneson. When I say I'm an Arneson fan, I should specify that I'm a fan of Arneson's early work in the game. It does not sound like he would have been a great person to have working for you. Yeah, he was very willing to openly criticize D&D when it came out, because pretty much he was like, oh, all my original ideas were great, and anything that got changed sucks type thing, and it's like, dude. And some other work that he was doing right around the D&D time, he was hired by one of the miniatures companies to write painting guides. And in the painting guides, he would criticize the miniatures for being historically inaccurate or, poorly cast or whatever. And he would put those criticisms in the painting guide about the miniature that he was getting paid by the miniature maker to write this thing. And he couldn't understand why that didn't go over well. So, it was a John Peterson blog post in Playing Out the World. It's called Arneson's Hit Points for Characters. I will put a link in the show notes. I will send you one separately offline, just so you have it. But yeah, there it is. And I think that covered everything you said. So thank you for that email, that voicemail, sir. And we're at 45 minutes of recording time. It will probably get closer to 35 or so when I edit this. There's not going to be a lot to chop out. But yeah, again, so everyone, thanks for listening. Next week, again, is another feedback episode. They're not Feedback Fridays anymore. Maybe they're, because they come out Wednesdays, maybe midweek messages or something. I don't know. So yeah, thanks for all the feedback. Keep it coming. feedback@decahedron.com if you want to leave an email, or if you want to attach a voice feedback as a file in an email. Or you can call, of course, 562-774-2278. 562-774-2278. That's 562-RPG-CAST. If you want to call, say hi.chat/decahedron if you're like maybe overseas, or you're just more comfortable recording from your computer and that's easier for you, by all means. And even the Anchor method works, but I'm so unsure if you need to have an Anchor account or something. And whereas say hi.chat, you definitely don't need one. Any of those ways. Or the Play forums, www.decahedron.com/boards. You leave off the /boards and you end up at the Decahedron landing page. All those methods are there. They're in the show notes. They're in the outro music that you are probably hearing now. Again, thank you very much for listening. Next week, more feedback. The week after that, a review with Jason for the Tunnel Quest RPG. Oh, you know what? I'm going to take a second here. I'll probably say this again next week too. I like doing reviews with a second person. I think any review helps to have 2 points of views standing on it. And so I have a list of games that I want to do reviews on, and I would love another reviewer. So first of all, Jason, you mentioned Adventures in Fantasy. Not Jason, I lied. Daniel, you mentioned Adventures in Fantasy, and I would love to do a review of Adventures in Fantasy. So if you want to, if you have it and you want to review it, I actually have a copy of the book, with the 3 different color inks, which is, I don't know what they were thinking. Also on the list of things to review, so just to go through, the briefest history, right? Blackmore was Dave Arneson's campaign. He played with a bunch of people, and one of the people who played with was called Richard Snyder. But anyway, Arneson and Gygax, of course, wrote D&D after Arneson and Arneson and TSR had a falling out. Arneson said, I'm going to publish what D&D was supposed to be. And he went with Richard Snyder because Arneson wasn't a very good writer. Which is kind of funny when you think about it, because Gygax was the high school dropout and Arneson was the college graduate, but Gygax was so much better at writing and stuff. But anyway, so Arneson joined up with Snyder to write Adventures in Fantasy, which, like I said, was what D&D was supposed to be, whatever. And then Snyder went off and with not SPI, the other company. Avalon Hill made Powers and Perils, which I think is just a very well-written, very gamist presentation of maybe the same rules. And I've always I looked at the combat formula once, and I said, "Oh no, that is from Adventures in Fantasy." I don't know how much the rest maps, but anyway, Powers and Perils I would like to review. So I would love a second reviewer for that. SPI had a role-playing game long time ago called Dragon Quest. I would love another reviewer to join me to review that. There's a game called Ryutama, which is a Japanese RPG about travel. I would love another reviewer about that, and particularly on that one, if there's been more than one other person that's heard of that, if one of you is more positive on the game, I think that would probably work better, because I'm a little negative on that game, and so I'd like to have a positive voice if one exists to offset me. I would like to do a review on the original Traveler, so I'd like to be joined by someone who wants to do that. Anyway, I have other games, and I'll bring them up here and there. Maybe I'll put together a list next week. So if you're out there and you wouldn't mind joining me on the mics for an hour or so to review one of these games, drop me a line. Any of those feedback methods, let me know, and I will gladly have you on the show. Anyway, I've rambled on long enough. Thank you again for listening, and until next week, happy gaming, happy life. Bye.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Decahedron RPG Cast. We'd love to hear from you. You can leave us a voice message by calling 562-774-2278. That's 562-RPG-CAST. Or by visiting sayhi.chat/Decahedron. You can also email us at feedback@decahedron.com. Links are in the show notes. For more information, visit decahedron.com. Remember that Decahedron is spelled with a K. Music is by Kevin MacLeod. Logos by Design Cat. Thanks again for listening, and until next time, keep those dice rolling.